So alright guys, I'm back out here working on this red 924S, and we're going to pick up where we left off. Last time I just got a bunch of parts in and I was going to start working on the engine, but first I thought I'd go ahead and replace that brake booster connector. One of the first things I want to do is replace this here. I'm going to go ahead and pull it out. It's alright, this already looks much better, and actually I'm not going to install this right now because I have to remove the intake later today, and it will be my luck that I end up breaking this off and then I have to spend another $50 to replace it. It's alright, I'm going to go ahead and get the belt cover off so that way I can get in there to the belts. I'm also going to remove this intake so that way I can change the air oil separator seals. And something I noticed was it looks like there's a leak from this balance shaft here. So what I've done is I went ahead and ordered new seals for the front of the engine. It's alright, I have the belt cover off now. And I thought we'd take a look at these belts. This balance shaft belt looks to be pretty new. When I was underneath I could see some text still written on it, so I don't believe it's been on there very long. If you look here, you can see that it's sitting kind of high and rubbing on this pulley here. And there is a huge amount of clearance between this roller and the upper run. And that's because they've got the tensioner turned the wrong way. You want to turn it towards the 5 o'clock position. It's not only going to snug the belt up against that balance shaft down there, assuring that it doesn't jump timing, but it will also lower this upper run here and keep it from rubbing on this pump. And then you also will be able to set the clearance properly on this roller. I don't know if I can get the camera down there, but that is a massive gap that they left in this. Anyway, let's check out the timing belt now. I can tell just by doing that that it is far too tight. And this does have the auto tensioner. Yeah, this is way too tight. But I've seen auto tensioners seize pumps before, because as I mentioned, when you have the belt tension too tight, the belt will actually try and straighten out and all of the load will be on the water pump here, and over time you just wear this bearing out and it will just bend this shaft and then you'll have a seized water pump, and you don't want that. I can't turn this at all. Now you don't want to be able to turn it freely or anything, but if you can't turn it at all, it's too tight. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and remove these belts so that way I can remove the rear belt cover and access the water pump. Alright, before you remove the belts, you want to make sure that you have your engine at top dead center. You can see my marks lined up right there. And I thought we'd check out the balance shaft timing as well. This upper balance shaft looks to be about a tooth off here. Let's go down here and see what we got. I'm not really surprised by anything these days. As I already mentioned, this is turned the wrong way. And you can see here that the sprocket is on wrong. The O should be in the rectangular window there. And I can't see the mark anywhere. So either this is 180 out or they've managed to get it in time with the sprocket on wrong. Alright, I have the balance shaft belt off and I'm trying to remove the timing belt. You can see that I have my tool on the auto tensioner here, and normally you should be able to compress this, but I mentioned that the belt was too tight, and that's because the tensioner itself is broken. There is a rod that runs through the spring underneath there, and when the nut comes off, then you will get the wrong tension, and you also won't be able to compress it. It's alright, I got that other auto tensioner out of here, and I've actually seen this a few times. As I mentioned, you can see that someone has clearly been messing with this, and you can see how the spring is sort of bent. That's because nothing's lining up in there anymore, and I actually couldn't get this to compress at all. I took a screwdriver and tried to make everything line up so that way I could compress it, but no dice. So what I had to do was just compress it as far as I could, lock it down. Then I took a screwdriver and just sort of worked the belt off the cam. Once I had the belt out of the way, then I was able to remove the nuts that hold it on. But anyway, I'm not going to be reusing this one. I'll be replacing it with this one here. Alright, I just removed the lower balance shaft sprocket, and it was on there correctly. However, it was timed 180 degrees out of phase. The reason why it looked like it was on incorrectly was because they put the plate on wrong. And you can see this tab here, they had jammed it in the same keyway with the Woodruff key, so that was fun trying to get this apart. No matter how much I pulled on it, it did not want to come off. So I was finally able to just wedge a screwdriver in between these and get it pulled out. But I hope I never see anything like that again. Alright, I got the belt cover off now. Maybe a look down in here. See, we got a leak on this side. I'm going to reseal this entire front end and change this water pump out. So I'm going to go ahead and get the coolant out now so that way I can pull the water pump. Alright, I have the water pump removed now. Next I'm going to go ahead and get this intake off. Have the intake off now. I'm going to clean this cam tower up and change these air oil separator seals. So alright, yesterday I got the belts, the water pump, and the intake off. Today I'm just going to work on cleaning this engine up. Maybe I'll get the oil cooler and the air oil separator off. I have the new seals for the air oil separator here. So alright, a subscriber sent me this small borescope that connects to your smartphone, and I thought we'd check it out. Since the engine's at top dead center, I thought we would check 2 and 3 first here. And I just thought I'd run it down in here and try and get some footage. It does have this here so you can dim and brighten the light. Don't know how well you can see that, but it's kind of hard to see on this. I'll go ahead and start recording. You can see the piston there. So I believe that's about all the footage I'm going to be able to get with this. It just doesn't seem to be bright enough to really see everything that you need to down in there, but I appreciate it all the same. That said, I already have a much larger borescope here, and this one has a much brighter light and better camera on it. And I'll just run that down in here. And I don't know if you guys can see that, but you can pretty much see anything you want with this one here. These cylinder walls look to be in excellent condition. Alright, I have the cylinder scope now. The cylinder walls look excellent. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and install the new spark plugs. Alright, I still need to clean this engine, and I don't want to get dirt or water down in here. So a great trick to do is take the old spark plug wires, just cut them like that, and that'll keep all the dirt and water out of here until you put your new ones on. So don't feel too bad for these old spark plug wires. These were the original ones and they were absolutely crumbling to pieces. I have brand new ones that are going to go on here, and if next time you don't want to hack up another set, then you can just put these in a bag and keep them around. But for now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and remove the air oil separator so that way I can replace the seals. So next I'm going to clean this up and I'll change the seals on it. I thought you guys might like to see this. Got a bunch of trash down there and around where the air oil separator was. I'm going to have to get that all cleaned out. Alright, I have the filler neck cleaned up now, and before I put the seals on and reinstall it, I thought I'd go ahead and remove the speed and reference sensors. Alright, I have the speed and reference sensors out now, and here they are. As you can see, what I did was I sprayed some WD-40 on them and just let them sit for about 10 minutes, and it worked its way down in here to the seal, and I was able to pull them out quite easily. And I'll show you the plugs here. As you can see, someone has this zip tied, and you can see that the wires are exposed, and this is just asking for trouble. You can see chunks of rubber just falling off there. So this is the reason why I'm just going to go ahead and replace them. I have the new speed and reference sensors in now. Next, I'm going to go ahead and install the filler neck and replace the air oil separator seals. Alright, I changed the seals and I got the oil filler neck put back in. Before I can connect it, you can see that the hose that runs to it here is completely split, so I'm going to be replacing that. Alright, I put a spare hose on here and hopefully the car will run a little bit better without that vacuum leak. Here's the J-boot that came on the car. As I mentioned, it's in pretty bad shape, and I have another one here that I'm going to replace it with. Alright, so I got a few leaks on the front of the engine, so I've got this reseal kit here I'm going to be installing. Has all the seals and O-rings, and it also has new collars for the cam and balance shaft. Alright, I have the cam sprocket off and the front cover off now. You can see, looks like there's a leak right there. Alright, I have the cam and the upper balance shaft sealed now. Next I need to put my flywheel lock on and remove these pulleys down here so that way I can change the front main seal, and I also need to change the lower balance shaft seal. Alright, I got the car jacked up. I went ahead and removed the starter and got the flywheel lock on. I now have the front crank bolt removed. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to find my pulley puller to get these sprockets off here. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and jump over here and replace the seals on the lower balance shaft. So alright, I've got this off. In order to do that, you need to remove the power steering, and hopefully you can see down in there. But anyway, while I've got this off, I thought it'd be a great time to go ahead and pull the oil cooler. So alright, last night I began removing the oil cooler. Now I've heard that you can remove it with the headers bolted up, so I thought I'd take a crack at it. I got the two lower bolts and the OPRV out last night. Today I'm working on the two upper bolts. And in order to do this with the headers bolted up, you'll need to remove that heat shield that is on the cooler itself. And then you'll need a tool like this, and then you'll just slide it underneath the headers and you'll be able to remove the bolts. Now I've got the rear bolt out already, but this one up here is tightened down pretty good. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's RTV, so I'm thinking there was a leak here and then someone just put some RTV on this and then cranked that bolt down. Try to get the oil cooler out, and you can see all this RTV that's down in there. I'm going to get this cleaned up and we'll put some new gaskets and seals on here. Do it the right way. You can see they even put RTV around this seal here rather than change it. So anyway, I was able to do this with the header still bolted up. It wasn't easy, but it is possible. Alright, I have the oil cooler all cleaned up and I've got the new gaskets here, so I'm going to go ahead and start assembling it. So alright, I have the oil cooler on. Of course, it's not tightened down. Next, I'm going to be installing the OPRV. In this package, I have some new seals for it. And here's the alignment tool that I'm going to be using. And you can see this is the late OPRV, and the alignment tool is quite a bit different than the early OPRV alignment tool. So make sure that you have the right one. And I don't really recommend trying to do this job without the alignment tools. I have done it before on the stand with the later one, but when I'm working in a tight space like this, it's always best to have the alignment tool because you cannot really see if everything's lining up. Alright, I have the new seal on, so I'm going to go ahead and line the oil cooler up and install the OPRV. So I have the housing torqued down now, and you can see my alignment tool is fully screwed in here, and you can see how easily I can spin it to remove it. And another thing that I noticed was that whenever I was torquing the bolts down, it would put a lot of load on this alignment tool. So I had to gently tighten down one bolt, then move in a star pattern to the other one and tighten it down like that. And it really wasn't until I had the housing fully tightened down that I was able to unscrew this alignment tool. So that's telling me that the housing is putting a lot of pressure on this thing. So that's another reason why I recommend using it and not risking tearing up your OPRV. So now I'm going to install the OPRV, and when everything is perfectly aligned, then you'll easily be able to take it, insert it here, and then screw it all the way in by hand. No binding at all, goes all the way in smoothly. There you go. Now I just have to tighten it down. So alright, I got the oil cooler put on now, and I just finished installing the heat shield down here. When I took it off, it was really loose because they didn't put the washers back on the bolts. So I replaced the washers, and it's on there really tight now. The owner was complaining that there was a rattle, and I'm thinking this may have been it, but we'll find out. So now that I have the oil cooler installed, I'm going to go ahead and replace the seals on the lower balance shaft and get this installed. Alright, I got the lower balance shaft seals changed, and I got the bracket put back on. I also installed the power steering pump. I went over to a parts cart and pulled a new tensioner to replace the broken one. Next, I'm going to be pulling the sprockets and changing the front main seal. I dug out my pulley puller and I was able to remove the front sprockets. Next, I'm going to clean the front of this engine up a little bit and change the front main seal. Alright, I cleaned up the front of the engine a little bit, and I got the front main seal on. Next, I'm going to install the water pump. Well, I had to stop the camera because I was getting ready to install the gasket, and when I pulled it out here, you can see that it's torn. So that's unfortunate, but luckily when you do this enough, you end up with a bunch of spares. So I looked around and I have a few extra water pump gaskets, and I'll just use one of those instead. So I was going to time lapse through this, but since I already have the camera running, I'll go ahead and put the water pump on. Once you get the water pump on, you want to make sure that you can turn it like that. This assures that you have the correct one. Sometimes they'll send you one for a 2.7 liter. So let me get the water pump bolts. Alright, so I got the oil cooler sealed up, I got all the front seals changed, and I even got the water pump on. Next, I'm going to install the rear belt cover. You can see here I've got it cleaned up. There shouldn't be any more leaks, so this thing should stay clean now. Right before it gets dark, I'm going to make a big push here to try and get the balance shaft sprockets and the crank bolt back in. Both balance shaft sprockets are on, and I have the front crank bolt tightened down now. I'm going to go ahead and take the flywheel lock off and put the starter back in and let the car down. Alright, so last night I got the front main seal changed. I installed the water pump and got all the sprockets back on. So today I'm going to work on installing the intake and getting the belts on. Alright, so what I did was I swapped out the tensioner that was on here with this other one, and I put the new sprocket on. You want to make sure that when you install the new sprocket that you put the flange towards the rear, and this here is how the tensioner should behave. As you can see here, I can move it quite a bit. I have the OT mark on the flywheel perfectly lined up, and I also have the cam mark perfectly lined up. As you can see, I have removed all the slack on this side of the belt, and it's all down here at the tensioner. I have it pulled back out of the way. As I mentioned, I had to replace this tensioner with a good used one, so I can now pull it out of the way like it should. What I'm going to do here is go ahead and release this one. The other tensioner was making the belt far too tight, so I have it released now. And let's check the tension here. So far it feels pretty good. And as you can see, I can turn the water pump. So this tensioner here has set the exact tension that we're looking for. I'm gonna double check the tension, and this auto tensioner has it spot on. As you can see, I can just barely rotate the pump there, and that means it's perfect. And if yours is just a little too tight, then what you can do is use your tool and just back it off a little bit. But now that I have the timing belt on, I'm going to install the balance shaft belt. Alright, I have the balance shaft belt on and all the new rollers. You can see the new water pump roller there, and this roller down here, and you can also see that since I turn the new tensioner the correct way, which is clockwise, it's snugged up against that lower balance shaft, and it also sits right up against this roller the way it should, and then you'll have a 0.5 millimeter clearance between the lower run. But also notice that the upper run isn't sitting too high anymore. Right here, the old belt was sitting right up against the top of this pulley like this here, and now it's sitting down here where it belongs. So now that that's on, I thought I would go ahead and show you that all the marks line up. You can see that I have the cam marks lined up here, and then we're going to have the upper balance shaft mark dead on, and of course the lower balance shaft here is also spot on. So the next thing I need to do is put the cover back on, and we'll put the new distributor on and then get the accessory belts put back on. Alright, the belts and the belt cover are now on. I went ahead and installed the new distributor and new spark plug wires. I lightly coated them with dielectric grease, so they are almost ready to install. Before I put the intake back on, I thought I'd go ahead and clean this engine up a little bit since everything's sealed up and sealed off, so that way no water will get inside. And then I'll go ahead and put the intake on, and hopefully we'll get this car driving today. Alright, I got the engine cleaned up, and I also cleaned up the intake. It isn't perfect, but I think once it's heat cycled from driving a few thousand miles, it should look pretty nice. That's how I clean my engine over here. Alright, this engine bay is looking great now. As I mentioned, I've been going through and replacing any bolts or washers that are missing, and I'm also replacing these clips. Now there is one bolt that I've left out, and you can see it in there. That is broken off, and it's really hard to remove. I couldn't get it out, and I didn't think it was worth replacing the air box over. It's in there pretty good. But anyway, other than that, everything is flawless. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the accessory belts on, and then tomorrow I'll get out here and fill the coolant up, and maybe we'll take it for a test drive. Alright, here's how the engine bay looks in the daylight. You can see the engine's nice and clean now. I even got the distributor and new spark plug wires put on. You can see I also replaced these zip ties along the firewall and put the new brake booster nipple on. I'm still trying to find a new dipstick. I may have to order one. And someone was asking in the comments about this kick down cable on the automatic cars. As you can see, this side comes from the accelerator pedal, and it's just one long cable. It goes around this and then runs all the way back to the transmission. So when you floor it, it'll go into passing gear. And this morning I thought I'd go ahead and fill the coolant up, and maybe we'll take it for a test drive down here. See, as I went and picked up some distilled water, and I have some coolant here, so I'm going to try and get this filled up here. It's alright, I have the coolant topped up now, and what I like to do when filling the system is raise the driver's side of the car so that way the expansion tank is higher than the bleed screw. Then I'll turn the heater on and then remove the bleeder screw, and I'll fill the expansion tank until the coolant comes out of the bleed screw here, and then I put the screw back in, and I just keep filling until I get to about right here between the minimum and the maximum, and then you'll want to open this again, and you'll probably have some air come out, and you'll just want to do that a few times, and the air will all come out here since this is going to be higher than the bleed screw. So anyway, that's just a nice tip. And I also got the accessory belts on last night. I thought I would show you that I replaced the tensioner for the power steering. And anyway, I'm getting ready to take this on a test drive. I need to get it off the jack there. I thought before I did, I would go ahead and replace this here, make the interior look a little bit nicer. I pulled that out of a parts car, and now we're ready to go. Alright, one last thing before I leave. I thought I'd go ahead and install the wiper arms and the new wiper blades. Alright, the engine's sealed up, coolant's topped off, and the new wiper blades are installed. Got the engine put back together and the coolant topped off. Next time we'll be taking this out for a test drive. There is still a lot of things I need to do to this car. I still need to install the rear speakers, fix the sunroof, and replace the fuel pump and the fuel filters, to say the least. I also need to change all the fluids. But anyway, guys, that's just about going to do it for this episode. I want to thank everybody for watching, and if you enjoy the content on this channel, be sure to like and subscribe. I try and upload videos every week. And also come join us on Facebook. I'll put a link in the description below. And I want to thank everybody who supports me on Patreon. Making videos every week can be rather hard and expensive, so I want to thank everybody again for that. And if you'd like to support me on Patreon, I'll also put a link to that in the description below. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.